Alright, hi guys, good to see y'all here. We'll get started now and hopefully get through this a little bit. We're going to be doing, I'm going to be showing you some techniques that I use when painting eyeballs in particular, and hopefully we'll have some fun with it. I'll show you some tools and techniques and what have you that I have developed over time, and it's the eye that we'll be doing today is going to be a stylized kind of an eye. It won't be entirely realistic, but all the techniques that I use today can be used for pretty much any kind of eye, whether you're doing a semi-realistic eye or a more realistic eye. Most of my stuff tends to be pretty stylized. So anyway, I thought we would start off by creating a custom brush because I use a specific type of custom brush when I'm creating the iris. And since you probably don't have one that's just like it, or we'll go ahead and make one. They're easy to make, and for those of you that haven't made one before, it'll be good to see how to do that. So let's just check, make sure everyone can hear me so far. Is it coming through okay, PK? Black Pawn, let me know if it's not coming. Okay. So we're going to create this custom brush first. And the first step in creating a custom brush is to create a blank canvas like this one. I use the square canvas, 1024 by 1024. This one here. Then we're just going to draw a few spots on this. For a brush, choose the standard hard round brush. For color, we want black. We want full opacity on this. I got my size set to 62. You don't have to be precise on this, but this is what we'll do. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw some spots on this guy just by tapping the canvas with the brush. A few spots of black, then we'll change to a medium gray, and we'll do a few more spots of the gray. Something like that. Like I say, it doesn't have to be exact. And then once you have that, you go to your Actions menu, and down here at the bottom you'll see Send to Photos. So you choose Send to Photos, and then select the one in the middle, the PNG file right there. And what that does is it exports this image to your camera roll, where we can now use it to create a brush. So, to create our new brush, we go to the brush tool and the settings, and up at the top here there's an add button. So you push the add button and it says add brush at the top, and at the very top is photo library. So if we go there, we're going to find our camera roll and pick that image that we just exported there, the one with the dots. Then you want to expand it a little bit so that it fills the whole area without cutting off any of the dots. Something like that. Then say Use. Now we have to go to the settings, so click on Edit, and we're going to set the flow really low. Set the flow down to like 2%. Set the spacing to 0. And the rest of the stuff you can leave at the defaults. So now we have this brush, and if I paint with it, let me clear this canvas, it paints these little streaks like this. Alright, so now we have our custom streaky brush. It's actually kind of good for doing hair and other things too. But we won't be using it for hair today. We're actually going to use it for smudging. Okay, so now we have a custom brush all made. Let's start a new canvas to do the eye with. I'm going to go to the 2048 resolution square canvas. Okay, any questions on making the brush before I go on to the next part? Thanks for typing for me, PK. I really appreciate that. If you missed it, you can always watch the video. I'll post a video of this class later. Obviously don't want to do it twice. The class will be probably an hour, hour and a half. Depends on how long it takes me to do. Alright, so let's work on our little eye. We'll start with the iris. The way I usually do this is I start with the hard round brush, the standard hard round brush, which is the first brush in your palette of brushes. We're going to set it to as big as it can be, 100%, and we'll do a brown eye. So we pick a color of brown that we like. Make it fairly dark. So a darkish brown color we'll pick. We can change this later, but we'll go with that. And then you just tap the canvas once to make a circle. And then I'll use the transform tool to make it a little bit bigger for myself to work on here. Usually when you're working on an eye, at least I find that it's nice to work on them really big and then shrink them down later. They look better that way usually than trying to do it really tiny, because there's a lot of details. Alright, oh, by the way, if you aren't familiar with the use of layers and the transform tool and what have you, I do have 3 other lessons about using layers. So you can always go and check those out. I'm not going to stop to explain how to use layers in this particular class. Okay, so that's there's our eyeball. We're done. We have the iris. No, we don't. Alright. So now I'm going to go to a layer above this one. I'm going to pick one that's 2 layers above, so there's like 1 layer in between. We'll use black for this. And I'm going to tap again using that same hard round brush to make the iris. Now usually I don't manage to tap it directly in the center. I did pretty good that time, but you can always transform it a little bit, after you do it. and move it around. Try to get it more or less centered in the eye like that. Alright. The other classes are all posted on my pages. You kind of have to go looking in there through them. If you search on tutorials, you might find them. I know eventually Blackpwn's going to add them to the classes page, but they're not there yet. They're all over on my page. Okay. So now we have, just to reiterate, 2 layers. One has the brown on it and one has the black on it. So now I'm going to go to this layer that's in between the two, this one right here, and I'm going to set its mode to on. Now what the on mode does is it prevents you from drawing outside of the parts of the layer below that are painted on. So it'll only, in other words, it will only paint on any place that the layer below has something on it. So in this case, the only thing we have on the layer below is this brown circle. So by setting the mode of this next layer to on, it prevents me from going outside the edges. Just makes it easier. I mean, you could always erase it later, but we might as well use the tools to keep us sane and do things the easy way. Alright, so now I'm going to take this brown that I originally started with, and I'll make a lighter version of it. I'll just turn the white up a little, turn the saturation down a little. It depends on what colors you want in your eye, but we'll kind of play around with it a little bit. We'll use a light brown first. I'm going to pick the leaf brush. This is the standard leaf brush. Has all kinds of little leafy sort of guys in there, and we use him. And then I will paint around on my iris with this leaf brush like yo. And then I'll probably change the colors a little bit. Maybe I'll use a little bit of a yellow in there, maybe a little brighter. I also might put some more darker browns back in there also. You just want to get kind of a mixture of some different color browns on your eye here, like that. Okay, so now that we have some multicolor kind of stuff on the iris, we now go to the Smudge Tool. Here's the Smudge Tool in the menu. See Smudge. And we go to the settings, and we go down here, and we find here at the bottom. Find this brush that we made, right? And we're going to be using that brush to smudge with. For strength, you'll probably want something like 50% or 60%. The size is, well, I'm using maybe 34, 47. Depends on the size of the eye you're working on. So you might have to fuss with them a little bit. Make sure that your spacing is set to 0, and that orient is on and paint is off. So we're just going to be doing a straight smudge here. Now the secret to this is to smudge always from the center out. So I'm going to start every stroke at the center of the eye and then stroke out toward the edge of the eye, like this. And we want to smudge all those colors together in this sort of radiating pattern to make it look more like eyes look. If you're trying to exactly duplicate a particular eye, of course, this might not work for you, but since we're just doing a stylized eye, there you go. Alright, so now we have a kind of nicely multicolored iris kind of thing. Then, last part that we want to do here, we want to pick a brush again. Usually I use just the regular soft round brush. And we're still painting on that same layer that's set to on. And I'm going to go all the way around the circumference of the eye. And I want to paint a dark, make sure that the edges are dark, in other words, because eyes usually have a dark ring around there. So we'll just go around it and make it dark all the way around the edge like this. There we go. Alright, so there we have the beginnings of our iris. One thing else that I usually do, but I mean it's up to you, you don't have to do it, is on the layer that has the pupil, which is just a black circle right now. I will usually use the Gaussian blur filter on that a little bit. So I'll go to filter, I'll check Gaussian blur, and I'll blur that just a little bit so that it doesn't have quite so hard an edge. Alright. So, any questions so far on that much of the eye? Okay, the on mode is a special mode that basically prevents you from painting anywhere that there is no paint on the layer below. So it basically keeps you from drawing outside the lines. It's just an easy way to constrain the paint so that it will stay on whatever else is underneath it. So whatever you have on the layer directly beneath the on layer will that sort of specifies where you can paint on this layer. I used it that way so that I could go outside the edges. If I turn the on mode off, maybe this will make it more clear. If I turn the on mode back to normal, you can see that I actually painted all outside the lines. Terrible, see? But by selecting on, it forces it to stay inside that circle that's underneath there. Since I have shaky hands, it's useful. Yeah, it is a mask. It's a type of mask. If I have this one turned off, yeah, it still works. Okay, so now that we have our guy here, is the audio stopped for PK? Still working for me, I think. Alright, well, the eye isn't done yet. This is just the beginning. Alright. Now what we're going to do is we're going to merge these guys together. If you want to, because we want to get them all onto one layer we can work on. So in order to do that, first choose the second layer, this one here that has the colors on it, and say merge down. That'll put all of that onto one layer. Then move the pupil layer down so it's directly above, and merge that one down too. Make sure that you merge the on layer first, because that will work. If you don't do that, it'll mess it up. Okay, so we now have one layer with our pupil, our iris and pupil on it. There it is. So since we've gotten that far, I'm going to save. Okay. Now that you have the basics of the iris ready, the next stage of the eye is deciding, what kind of eye it's going to be, because most of the differences in eyes are actually all the surrounding stuff around it. The irises are always kind of the same. So what I'm going to do here is just demonstrate one possible way of doing this. There's infinite ways to do eyes. We'll start off by filling the bottom layer with some kind of a color. So we'll pick some sort of a skin color. I don't want... So let's get something that's kind of like a skin color. I'm going to make it somewhat dark, just for the sake of showing you. Okay, so now we have a basic color on the background to work from. We'll slide this up a little bit here. And underneath the eye, we're going to put I usually put the white part down at this stage so that I can kind of gauge what's going to happen. Now for the white of the eye, you actually don't want to use white. The best tone to use is a very light color of whatever the skin is. Now, if you've seen some of my drawings, I do all kinds of different color skins: blue, orange, red, green. I hardly ever do anyone with normal colored skin, but I still use a really light color of whatever the skin color is for the white of the eye. It just makes it blend better. So we'll take this skin color, this brown, and we'll make a very light version of it by turning the lightness up and the saturation down, but not all the way to white. And we'll use that. Now I'm just going to use the vector tool. I'm going to set it to circle, and I'm going to draw a circle on this layer that's behind the eye. Now, I guess I had... Okay, I crashed. I'm back now. You got the sound still? Sound back? Let me know if you're still hearing it. I might have to restart. Yeah, sound is back. Okay, cool. We'll go from there. Alright, let me pick that color again. This is why I save. So we're going to turn the lightness up and the saturation down and get a semi-white. I'm going to use the vector tool, a circle shape, and we'll draw behind there the white of the eye. There, like that. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to wind up covering most of it up anyway. Alright. Yeah, what's the question? Da, 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 da. We need some waiting for question music. Da, 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 da. For other types of eyes, I mean, you can modify these techniques however you want. If you wanted a slit pupil, just don't draw a circle one. Draw a slit one. If you want, weird colors in the eyes, you use the weird colors or shapes or patterns or whatever. All right. Well, we'll move on here because I guess that's it. All right, so we're going to decide what shape we want our eye to be here. And the way I'm going to do this, like I said, there's lots of ways to do this, but I'm just going to use the kind of the cheap way, the fast way for the sake of this class. I'm going to pick a slightly lighter color than the skin. And I'll just use the soft brush, I think. The soft round brush, number 2. And then I'm on the layer. I'm not going to get too fancy with this part. They're above all these other 2 layers, so I'm not painting over anything yet. And I will start to paint in where I think the upper eyelid will go. Normally the upper eyelid will touch the pupil on a real eye. So for our stylized eye, we'll go ahead and do that as well. This doesn't matter too much because we won't really probably keep most of it, but we'll paint the top eyelid in there to some degree. Something like that. And then we'll make a darker color, darker than the skin tone, and we'll paint that in for the bottom of the eye. And usually the bottom one will just touch or not quite touch the bottom of the iris. It depends on the expression the eye is making. If it's a surprised eye, it'll be much wider. If it's an angry eye, it might be more slitty. But just for the sake of showing you the basics here, we'll make a simple, almost symmetrical eye. It's actually not a great idea to make your eye symmetrical, but I will, just for today. Okay, so now we're going to do some shading on the eye and add some lights and things to it. But before we do that, we should probably talk a little bit about the construction of an eye. Let me save this out first. So let me turn these guys off for a sec. So when we're talking about an eye, how the eye is made, an eye is basically a sphere like yo. And if you're looking at the eye from the side, the lids, as they come across the eye, will come like the upper one will come like this down across the eye, and then the lower one comes in here and wraps around it like that kind of deal. So we have a lower lid and an upper lid, and the upper lid and lower lid both stick out a little bit over the edges of the eye. So right here there's an overhang. The upper lid is sort of like an awning that hangs over the eye. And then right here, the lower lid sticks out a little bit, so there's a little ridge there that will catch some light. So the result of all this is that on this upper one here, we'll have a shadow, and on this lower one here, a little bit of light will catch it. So if we want to make our eye look more realistic, and what I like for my eyes is actually to have them have elements of realism. So this is what I think about when I make an eye. So on our eye here, that means that we will have, let me clear that up in there, a shadow that shows up in this area here underneath the upper lid, and then there will be light that hits down here on the lower one. So light will come in and hit that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it the cheapest way possible. because I'm pretty much lazy. I don't like to work too hard. So I'm going to take that same light color that I used for the top lid, and I'm just going to draw as best I can an edge around the bottom here like this. So that'll make it look like light is hitting that. And of course you can use your eraser and what have you to clean it up a bit until you get the edge the way you want it to be. But something along those lines will be good enough for what we're doing here. Okay, so now if you make it small, you can see that it's starting to it actually looks like a kind of angry eye. This guy looks sort of ticked off. That's right, we'll let him be that way for now. Now I'll show you my little trick for shading the shadow part. You want to pick the layer that's directly above all these other layers, and we're going to set it to multiply. Turn it down to maybe 50-60%. We'll pick a color of pure black. We'll take our handy dandy vector tool, make sure that it is set to fill and that the gradient is off. Simplify could be 3 or 4 or whatever you like. I've got it on 4 right now. And what we're going to do is draw with the vector tool. Oops, I forgot to turn the layer on. Okay, turn the layer on and then draw on it about where we think the shadows will go. So I'm just guessing here at approximately where they'll be, but it'll be something along that line. Sort of a upside down U shape. Then once I have my shadow area defined, I then go to the filter. I select up here Gaussian blur, that's this guy here, and the default amount is probably enough, so we'll leave it at that for now and see how it goes. And then we just turn down the amount a little bit so it's not quite so intense. There, now we have a shadow in the eye. And all I have to do is clean up the edges a little bit maybe, so that it's not shadowing here, something like that. Alright, so that gives us a pretty good shadow for the eye. So the eye is starting to look three-dimensional now because of the shadowing on the eye and the light color of the bottom lid. That edge of the bottom lid makes it. Now for eyelashes, when you're going to do the eyelashes, you can get, especially if you're going to do a really big eye, like this eye is huge, it's taking up the entire canvas. In most of the paintings that I do, the eye will actually be much smaller. I will start with it this big and then I'll shrink it down later. So the eyelashes don't matter so much when it's smaller as far as how exact they are. If you were going to do a painting of an eye this big, you would want to put in every single eyelash. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to do the cheap way of doing some eyelashes. I do that a lot, the cheap way. So what we'll do is, we'll just pick the third brush here, I guess. It's probably good enough. And let's make sure we're on a new layer here. And we'll just use black, even though actually a dark brown would probably be better. Let's pick a really dark brown, so it's not quite black. Alright. And then we'll just paint like a. I want to kind of do it with a single stroke if I can. The area that the eyelash would be, something like this. Like I said, this is you're only going to get away with this if you're going to shrink the eye down later, which we probably will. So we'll do that, and then we'll go back to our smudge with that same handy dandy tool that we made earlier. And now we'll smudge some lashes onto this guy just by. I need more strength here. Turn the strength up. If the lashes don't get long enough, you'll have to increase the strength a little bit. And you can just smudge some lashes onto this thing. Like I said, they'll be good enough if you're going to shrink this down there. Otherwise, they look kind of they look more like a caterpillar crawling across the eye, but we'll just use it like this. And then take your eraser and shape it up a little bit. Make sure that the bottom edge is not fuzzy, or not too fuzzy. Alright. Something like that. We'll call that an eyelash for now. There. Eyelash. Alright, let's save that so far. Alright, I should probably stop for questions. Any questions so far on that? Yeah, this is fun. It's fun to do this. Let's shrink it down. See, if it's small like that, it's actually pretty good. That's why I like to make the eyes big and make them small later. Well, you can do a lower lash. Lower lashes are very thin, usually just a few little hairs. So you have a few choices there. You can just draw them in with the pen tool, or you can just leave them out. Especially if you're doing comic style things, like most of my stuff is kind of comic-ish. I usually don't even bother putting in the lower lashes. As far as defining the eyelids more, I'm not sure. I just use sure what you mean by that. Use the eraser, like to clean up the edges a little bit, back and forth. I'm actually putting more. Go paint over it a little bit. That's what I do. Pretty bad at it, but yeah. As far as different for male versus female, yeah, I mean, there's the basic differences between male and female eyes are pretty small. You can get away with pretty much the same technique for both. The male eye will tend to be a little squintier, at least if you're talking about comic type of male eyes. The female eye will be a little more wide open, not too much. Also tend to tilt them a little bit more up on the outside corner of the female eye is usually a little higher than it is on the male eye. And the eyebrows in particular are different. They're much more arched. We're not even going to do an eyebrow today, but the female eyebrow is that's kind of what you key off of. Is this a female eye or a male eye? It's kind of based on the eyebrow more than anything else. Yeah, there is an eyelash pen, and it works pretty good. You can do that. I do. I rotate it sometimes. I'm not rotating it now. Okay, so now that we have you know, the basics of it. Obviously, you can spend more time cleaning up this eye a lot. I've been kind of sloppy here, but I'm just trying to show you the basic techniques for doing this. The next part that we need, the parts that are missing, is the light parts, the light effects. So let's do that. The way we're going to do that, there's two different light effects we're going to do. The first part is to actually lighten up the iris where the light is hitting it. And to do that, we'll make another new layer. We'll set it to dodge. This will be our dodge layer. We'll use the soft round brush again. Probably set it to about 50% opacity or something. And for a color, we're going to use a darkish gray. Now as I paint this darkish gray onto the dodge layer, what that will do is cause underlying layers to be brightened. So I'm going to draw or paint a little bit over the iris area here. And what I want to do is I want to lighten up the bottom right edge. What I'm thinking of here is that the light is coming from the top left. So the bottom right of the iris needs to be lighter. I also notice that I've got a little bit too much of the lower lid covering this up, so let me erase a little bit of the lower lid so that it doesn't cover up so much of my eye. Spoils the class if you can't see the effect I'm trying to do here. Alright, there. Okay, so we oops, I got eraser still on. So we lighten up the bottom edge of this iris a little bit. Then we go to a lighter shade of gray, and we lighten up the inside just right around the pupil a little bit more. How much you want to go with this depends on, you know, how powerful an effect you want on it. Sometimes I go kind of crazy with the dodge effects because I like them. Something like that. So now when you shrink it down, you see how it's lighter there. If you want, you can also darken the other areas. We'll just leave this kind of like this, I think, for now. I'm going to overdo it a little bit. Alright. Now, like I said, this is all being videotaped, so you can watch it over again, or you can stop and see what I did, go back and see it again. Alright, so now we need yet one more layer. Look how many layers we're using just to make one eye. Yeah, dodge is confusing a little bit. Basically, the way dodge works is it lightens up whatever's underneath it. So if you paint black on a dodge layer, it will do nothing. If you paint a dark gray, it will lighten things up a little bit. If you paint white, it'll lighten them up a lot, usually too much. It'll just blow them out. So that's why I painted on there with a little bit of a gray. And then I slowly lightened up the gray a little bit more and a little bit more until I got the effect I wanted. What I'm looking for is to have the iris be brighter a little bit on the bottom right edge. Does that help at all? I hope so. Alright, so the last part of doing the eye is to bring it to life with the highlights, what I call the catch lights. We need a new layer above all the other layers. We use our same soft round brush. And this is the only time that I use pure white, is for the highlights. So I've got pure white selected, and I'm just going to paint in on top of everything this really pure white highlight. then often I will also put a larger, not so a lesser one, a bigger but lesser right here. Just a little bit there, like that. So that starts to make the eye look like it's actually glossy and reflecting some light. Let me save that out. Okay, so we got any questions so far on the on this iris technique? It's really more of an iris technique than a whole eye technique. But yeah, I want to show you a couple of little tricks that you can do with what you've got so far. Stuff that's just fun and that you might not know Sketch Club can do. But first, I'll wait for any questions. Any questions so that I can answer before we go next? Let's shrink him down a little. There he is. Yeah, he looks pretty good. He's still messy around the edges. I'd clean it up before I used it. But, okay, yeah. Okay, I guess no more questions about that. Alright, let me just show you something fun. I think this is fun. Let's say we got all this way, and we decide we want to play around a little bit with the color of the eye. So, let's see. Make a new layer. I'm going to drag this down here so that it's directly above the iris layer. This is the iris here, see? All this stuff is still on separate layers. So on this layer here, I'm going to set this layer to color. And this is fun. I'll pick red because everyone wants a red eye, don't they? The Red Eye Express. And I'll just take that red and I'll paint it on the color layer. Just like that. There. Since we are digital art, so you see that if we want to change, it just takes a moment. We are never stuck. The color, as long as you know the tool. Alright, so there's a red one. Let's say we wanted this to be a blue eye. We could do that too. Oops. Make sure you're on the right layer when you do this. Clear. We can turn it blue. I like to play around with different kinds of eyes, so I'm always messing around with the way the eyes look. Yeah, you can use the color adjustment hue to change it as well. You'll get a slightly different effect that way. It's a little harder to undo that sometimes, but yeah, that works as well. And of course you can do like weird stuff, like if we were to take the chain tool and draw around here, I could do some things like that. Whoa, this guy's got strange eyes. Okay. Oh, PK lost the sound again. Oh well, he got most of it. Everyone else can still hear, I guess. Alright. So let's say that we're happy with this eye. I mean, I know we're not completely happy with the eye, but let's pretend that we're happy with the eye. And let's say that we're going to merge them all down. Because we use so many layers up here just to do the eye. we need to merge them together before we can actually do any of the rest of the painting. So the way to do that is to come to the bottom layer here. This is one that was the skin. We'll turn him off, move him up to the top, make sure that he's not visible. And then go back to the bottom layer and choose Merge Visible. What that will do is take all of the layers that are currently visible and merge them onto one. And it'll still keep the transparency. Alright. Now let me go get my skin layer back here and put him back on. We can now copy our eyeball down, so we have 2 copies of the eyeball. Alright, it crashed again. Do we have sound back yet? Hello? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sound back? Yeah? Okay. So we'll pick up from there. We now have the 2 copies of the eyeball in our skin. And since we now have 2 copies of it, we can use the transform tool to start, moving them around and doing some stuff with them, with the 2 eyes. And you can just play around with them, put them in different. Since we already put the highlights on, if you were to change the direction of one, it would look completely wrong now because the highlight is on the wrong side. So there's a lesson in there. If you're going to duplicate the eye and actually use it, don't put the highlights in. Leave them until after you've duplicated and moved the eye around. And then put them in so that they can be correct. Otherwise it will look very strange indeed. Alright. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover on this today. Obviously there's more to do with the surrounding area of the eye. The upper and lower lids, the eyebrows and what have you. But that's how I do the interior of the eye most of the time. So any questions, comments, criticisms, glops? You can send glops to Black Fawn. He needs more glops. But basically, any questions on that so far? Yes, I will be uploading this. I will make the video and attach it to this picture and then upload it to my Sketch Club page, and then you can go check it out as soon as it's up there. Hopefully you learned a few techniques and some of the tools in Sketch Club by watching this that you can then use to do your own stuff with, because it's fun. Yay. Alright, that was great. Let me turn off my recorder here. Yes, thank you, PK. I know it's hard to keep up with my rambling. I do really appreciate that. So I will process this video and then upload it as soon as I can, and you'll be able to find it over on my Sketch Club page. So thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.